Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 2 of our complete practice question series for the AZ-400 Microsoft Certified DevOps Engineer Expert exam. Choose your answer before the timer ends. Then review the correct answer, explanation, and exam tip. Let us begin part 2. Question number 42. Scenario. A developer accidentally committed a 2 GB diagnostic archive and pushed it to GitHub. Deleting the file in a later commit did not reduce repository history. The team must remove the object from all affected history and then force push the cleaned refs. Which tool is designed for this repository cleaning operation? The available options are as follows. Option A, Scalar. Option B, GitLFS. Option C, BFG Repository Cleaner. Option D, Gitinit. The correct answer is option C, BFG Repository Cleaner. Here's why. BFG Repository Cleaner can rewrite repository history to remove large or sensitive objects efficiently before the cleaned history is pushed. Why are the other options not correct? A. Scalar optimizes work with very large repositories, but does not remove an existing object from history. B. GitLFS manages large files going forward. Simply enabling it does not purge an already committed blob from prior commits. D. Gitinit initializes repository metadata and does not rewrite existing history. Exam tip. Removing a file from the current tree is not enough. Repository size falls only after the object is removed from reachable history and garbage collection occurs. Question number 43. Scenario. A platform team governs pull requests to the main branch of an Azure repos repository. The team wants built-in enforcement for work item traceability and reviewer count, plus an external security review service that reports its result to the pull request. Match each requirement to the policy mechanism that should enforce it. A policy mechanism may be used more than once. The left side items are as follows. Left item 1. Require an external security review service to approve the pull request. Left item 2. Require at least 2 approving reviewers. Left item 3. Require every pull request to have a linked work item. The right side choices are as follows. Right option A, build validation policy. Right option B, branch policy. Right option C, status policy. The correct matches are as follows. Left item 1, require an external security review service to approve the pull request. The correct match is status policy. Left item 2, require at least 2 approving reviewers. The correct match is branch policy. Left item 3, require every pull request to have a linked work item. The correct match is branch policy. Here's why. Minimum reviewer count and linked work items are configured as branch policies. A third-party system reports a pull request status, which can be required through a status policy. Exam tip. Use branch policies for native pull request governance and a required status policy for validation supplied by an external service. Question number 44. Scenario. A travel application sends request telemetry to Application Insights. An engineer must list failed requests from Berlin or Madrid during the last 30 minutes and return only timestamp, URL, result code, and duration. Complete the KQL query. Select the correct expression for each blank. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. The time filter should be requests were the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are 1. Timestamp equals ago, 30M, timestamp now, 30M, or timestamp equals ago, 30M. Statement 2. After filtering result code equals 404 in the 2 client cities, the final operator should be the blank timestamp, URL, result code, duration. The choices for Statement 2 are 2. Project, extend, or summarize. For Statement 1, the correct selection is where select. Timestamp equals ago, 30M, ago, 30M, returns the datetime boundary 30 minutes before query execution, and equals keeps request from that point onward. For Statement 2, the correct selection is select, timestamp, URL, result code, duration. Project selects the requested columns and output order. Exam tip. In KQL, use ago for a relative time boundary and project when the requirement is to return a specific column set. Question number 45. Scenario. A GitHub repository contains first-party application code. The security team wants static analysis to run in GitHub Actions and report exploitable coding vulnerabilities as code scanning alerts. What should the DevOps engineer configure? The available options are as follows. Option A, Dependabot alerts. Option B, a CodeQL workflow. Option C, branch protection rules only. Option D, the GitHub advisory database only. The correct answer is option B, a CodeQL workflow. Here's why. CodeQL analyzes first-party source code for vulnerability patterns and publishes findings as GitHub code scanning alerts. Why are the other options not correct? A. Dependabot alerts focus on vulnerable dependencies rather than static analysis of first-party source code. C. Branch protection can require checks, but does not itself scan source code. D. The advisory database contains vulnerability intelligence, but does not execute repository code analysis. Exam tip. Use CodeQL for code scanning and Dependabot for dependency vulnerability and update workflows. Question number 46. Scenario. A DevOps leader is building a delivery scorecard. One measure must show elapsed time from when engineers begin work until the item is completed. Another must show the proportion of defects that escaped validation and were discovered after production release. Match each measurement to the correct KPI. The left side items are as follows. Left item 1. Percentage of defects first discovered in production. Left item 2. Elapsed time from work start to work item completion. The right side choices are as follows. Right option A, lead time. Right option B, defect escape rate. Right option C, mean time to recover. Right option D, cycle time. The correct matches are as follows. Left item 1. Percentage of defects first discovered in production. The correct match is defect escape rate. Left item 2. Elapsed time from work start to work item completion. The correct match is cycle time. Here's why. Defect escape rate measures defects that reach production. Cycle time measures how long an item spends in active work from start through completion. Exam tip. Lead time begins at request or creation. Cycle time begins when active work starts. Question number 47. Scenario. An organization configures an Azure Artifacts feed to consume packages from a private upstream feed. Packages requested through the feed are saved after successful retrieval. Which two benefits can this design provide? Each correct answer presents a complete benefit. Select exactly two answers. The available options are as follows. Option A. It can continue serving previously saved packages during a temporary upstream outage. Option B. It automatically authenticates every developer to the private upstream without configuring credentials or permissions. Option C. It can reduce repeated retrieval latency by serving a saved package from the local feed. Option D. It guarantees lower feed storage consumption because upstream packages are never retained locally. The correct answers are option A. It can continue serving previously saved packages during a temporary upstream outage, and option C. It can reduce repeated retrieval latency by serving a saved package from the local feed. Here's why. Saved upstream packages are available from the local feed, which reduces dependency on current upstream availability and can avoid repeated remote retrieval latency. Why are the other options not correct? B. The upstream connection still requires valid authentication and feed permissions. Proxying does not create automatic identity. D. Saving upstream packages consumes local feed storage rather than guaranteeing a reduction. Exam tip. Upstream sources improve dependency reliability through controlled caching, but they do not eliminate authentication or storage requirements. Question number 48. Scenario. Build lead time has increased in an Azure DevOps organization. The operations team suspects jobs are waiting because a shared self-hosted agent pool has insufficient usable capacity. Which two methods directly help validate agent pool exhaustion? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Select exactly two answers. The available options are as follows. Option A. Review the organization-level pool consumption report. Option B. Review only the pipeline duration report. Option C. Query the task agent pool size snapshots endpoint for historical pool capacity snapshots. Option D. Query only the pipeline runs endpoint for completed run metadata. The correct answers are option A. Review the organization-level pool consumption report, and option C. Query the task agent pool size snapshots endpoint for historical pool capacity snapshots. Here's why. The pool consumption report exposes pool usage and queue pressure, while task agent pool size snapshots provides historical agent pool capacity data that can be analyzed against demand. Why are the other options not correct? B. Pipeline duration can reveal slower runs, but does not directly establish that the agent pool was exhausted. D. Pipeline run metadata alone does not provide the pool capacity history needed to confirm exhaustion. Exam tip. To diagnose queue delays, analyze capacity and consumption at the agent pool level rather than relying only on overall run duration. Question number 49. Scenario. A GitHub Actions workflow performs code scanning. It must run for pull requests targeting main or any branch beneath releases / but only when files under src / change. Markdown files under src / must not trigger the workflow by themselves. Complete the pull_request filter by selecting the correct pattern for each blank. The paths list will contain both an inclusion and an exclusion pattern. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. The additional branch pattern after main is the blank. The choices for statement 1 are 1. Releases /**, release **, or releases /*/ main. Statement 2. The inclusion pattern for all files at any depth under src is the blank. The choices for statement 2 are 2. src /**, src /**, or /src. Statement 3. The negative path pattern that excludes markdown files under src is the blank. The choices for statement 3 are 3. src /****md/md or src/***md. For statement 1, the correct selection is releases /***. The recursive branch glob covers branch names whose path begins with releases /. For statement 2, the correct selection is src /***. The double star pattern includes files in src and all nested directories. For statement 3, the correct selection is src /*******md. A later negative pattern in paths excludes markdown files while retaining the positive src /*** inclusion. Exam tip. Do not configure paths and paths ignore for the same event. Combine inclusion and exclusion patterns in paths when both are required. Question number 50. Scenario. A deployment pipeline provisions identical public websites in multiple Azure regions and creates an Azure Traffic Manager profile. Compliance requires users to be routed according to the geographic origin of their DNS query so that each country is mapped to its designated regional endpoint. Which traffic manager routing method should the infrastructure as code definition configure? The available options are as follows. Option A, priority. Option B, weighted. Option C, performance. Option D, geographic. The correct answer is option D, geographic. Here's why. Geographic routing maps geographic regions, including countries and regions, to specific endpoints based on the origin of the DNS query. Why are the other options not correct? A. Priority routing sends all traffic to the highest priority healthy endpoint and is intended for failover. B. Weighted routing distributes traffic according to configured proportions, not country mappings. C. Performance routing selects the endpoint with the lowest network latency, which does not guarantee a country-specific mapping. Exam tip. Use geographic routing for compliance or localization mappings. Use performance routing for latency-based endpoint selection. Question number 51. Scenario. A team uses semantic versioning for a reusable SDK. 3 independently released changes are planned. 1 adds a backward-compatible API, 1 breaks existing consumers, and 1 fixes a defect without changing the public API. Match each change to the version component that must be incremented. The left side items are as follows. Left item 1. A backward-compatible defect correction with no new public functionality. Left item 2. A change that removes an existing public method and breaks consumers. Left item 3. A backward compatible addition of a new public method. The right side choices are as follows. Right option A, minor. Right option B, patch. Right option C, major. The correct matches are as follows. Left item 1. A backward compatible defect correction with no new public functionality. The correct match is patch. Left item 2. A change that removes an existing public method and breaks consumers. The correct match is major. Left item 3. A backward compatible addition of a new public method. The correct match is minor. Here's why. Patch is used for backward compatible bug fixes, major for incompatible API changes, and minor for backward compatible functionality additions. Exam tip. In SimVer, major breaks compatibility, minor adds compatible functionality, and patch delivers compatible fixes. Question number 52. Scenario. A product team is designing an Azure DevOps dashboard for flow analysis. The dashboard must expose process bottlenecks, active work completion time, and remaining work within the current sprint. Match each reporting requirement to the most appropriate widget or chart. The left side items are as follows. Left item 1. Show remaining work over the course of one iteration. Left item 2. Show how long an item takes from the start of active work until completion. Left item 3. Show work accumulation by state to reveal process bottlenecks. The right side choices are as follows. Right option A, lead time. Right option B, cumulative flow diagram. Right option C, sprint burndown. Right option D, cycle time. Right option E, velocity. The correct matches are as follows. Left item 1. Show remaining work over the course of one iteration. The correct match is sprint burndown. Left item 2. Show how long an item takes from the start of active work until completion. The correct match is cycle time. Left item 3. Show work accumulation by state to reveal process bottlenecks. The correct match is cumulative flow diagram. Here's why. Sprint burndown tracks remaining work in an iteration. Cycle time measures active work duration. A cumulative flow diagram shows work by state and highlights growing queues and bottlenecks. Exam tip. Use CFD for flow imbalance, cycle time for active work duration, and sprint burndown for iteration progress. Question number 53. Scenario. A repository administrator is configuring Dependabot. One requirement is to open pull requests that remediate vulnerable dependencies reported by alerts. Another is to open routine pull requests when newer dependency versions become available according to a schedule. Match each requirement to the Dependabot feature that implements it. The left side items are as follows. Left item 1. Open scheduled pull requests for newer dependency versions. Left item 2. Open pull requests that remediate vulnerable dependencies. The right side choices are as follows. Right option A, Dependabot alerts. Right option B, Dependabot security updates. Right option C, dependency graph. Right option D, Dependabot version updates. The correct matches are as follows. Left item 1. Open scheduled pull requests for newer dependency versions. The correct match is Dependabot version updates. Left item 2. Open pull requests that remediate vulnerable dependencies. The correct match is Dependabot security updates. Here's why. Version updates create scheduled dependency upgrade pull requests. Security updates create pull requests that update vulnerable dependencies to secure versions. Exam tip. Alerts identify vulnerable dependencies. Security updates remediate alerts. Version updates perform scheduled maintenance upgrades. Question number 54. Scenario. An Azure Container Registry contains an ACR task named rebuild base that normally runs on a timer. A pipeline operator must start that existing task immediately without defining a new image build. Which Azure CLI command should the operator run? The available options are as follows. Option A, AZ-ACR run. Option B, AZ-ACR task run. Option C, AZ-ACR build. Option D, AZ-ACR task run. The correct answer is option D, AZ-ACR task run. Here's why. AZ-400 task run manually queues an existing AZ-400 task for immediate execution. Why are the other options not correct? A. AZ-400 run is not the command for manually executing a named AZ-400 task. B. AZ-400 task run is not a valid Azure CLI command group syntax. C. AZ-400 build queues a quick build from source rather than starting the existing scheduled task definition. Exam tip. Use AZ-400 task run for an existing task and AZ-400 build for an ad hoc quick build. Question number 55. Scenario. The same application is deployed to 3 Azure virtual machines. Every instance must read one secret from Azure Key Vault. The security team wants one identity and one least privilege Key Vault assignment that can be shared by all 3 machines. Which identity should the DevOps engineer attach to the virtual machines? The available options are as follows. Option A. A separate system-assigned managed identity on each virtual machine. Option B. A user-assigned managed identity. Option C. A user account represented by a personal access token. Option D. A service principal with a long-lived client secret stored on each machine. The correct answer is option B. A user-assigned managed identity. Here's why. A user-assigned managed identity is an independent Azure resource that can be attached to multiple virtual machines. One narrowly scoped Key Vault role assignment can therefore authorize all application instances. Why are the other options not correct? A. Each system-assigned identity is unique to one virtual machine, requiring separate permission grants. C. A personal access token is not an Azure Key Vault workload identity. D. A client secret increases credential management risk and is unnecessary when managed identity is supported. Exam tip. Use a user-assigned managed identity when multiple resources must share one identity and permission set. Question number 56. Scenario. A developer needs only the services/payments directory from a very large Azure repos monorepo. The initial clone should use Git's large repository optimizations and minimize downloaded objects and checked out files. Complete the command sequence. Select the correct command for each blank. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. From the parent directory, run the blank repo_URL. The choices for Statement 1 are 1. Scalar clone, Git clone, or scalar run. Statement 2. Inside the cloned repository, run the blank set services/payments. The choices for Statement 2 are 2. Git sparse checkout, Git worktree, or Git fetch. For Statement 1, the correct selection is scalar clone. Scalar clone configures a partial, sparse clone, and other recommended settings for a large repository. For Statement 2, the correct selection is Git sparse checkout. Git sparse checkout set limits the working tree to the required directory. Exam tip. Use scalar for large repository optimization and Git sparse checkout set for path-level working tree selection. Question number 57. Scenario. In Azure boards, work item deploy API cannot start until work item approve firewall change is completed. The dependency must be recorded from the deploy API work item. Which link should be added from deploy API to approve firewall change? The available options are as follows. Option A. Open links, add an existing item link, and choose predecessor. Option B. Open links, add an existing item link, and choose successor. Option C. Add a parent link. Option D. Add a related link. The correct answer is Option A. Open links, add an existing item link, and choose predecessor. Here's why. The firewall approval must occur before the deployment work item, so it is the predecessor of deploy API. Why are the other options not correct? B. A successor link would indicate that the linked firewall item occurs after deploy API. C. Parent represents hierarchy rather than execution dependency. D. Related records a general association and does not express ordering. Exam tip. From the current work item, link work that must finish first as predecessor and work that follows it as successor. Question number 58. Scenario. A pull request in a GitHub repository must be associated with Azure Boards work items 981, 982, and 983. The commit should transition only work item 981 by using a supported work item action keyword. Which commit message line should be used? The available options are as follows. Option A, fixes AB number 981, fixes AB number 982, fixes AB number 983. Option B, AB number 981, AB number 982, AB number 983. Option C, fixes AB number 981, AB number 982, AB number 983. Option D, fixes number 981, number 982, number 983. The correct answer is option C, fixes AB number 981, AB number 982, AB number 983. Here's why. All three AB hashtag references create Azure Boards links, and the action keyword immediately associated with AB number 981 requests the transition only for that first item. Why are the other options not correct? A. Repeating the action keyword requests transitions for all three work items. B. The work items are linked, but no action keyword requests a state transition. D. Without the AB prefix, the references target GitHub issues rather than Azure Boards work items. Exam tip. Separate traceability from state transition. Every AB hashtag reference links, while action keywords determine which referenced work items transition. Question number 59. Scenario. A release work item named Publish Mobile App is blocked until the security sign-off work item is complete. The link will be created while editing Publish Mobile App. How should the dependency be represented? The available options are as follows. Option A. Add security sign-off with the related link type. Option B. Add security sign-off with the successor link type. Option C. Add security sign-off with the predecessor link type. Option D. Add security sign-off as the parent work item. The correct answer is option C. Add security sign-off with the predecessor link type. Here's why. Security sign-off must finish before Publish Mobile App, so it is a predecessor of the current release work item. Why are the other options not correct? A. Related does not define dependency direction. B. Successor would mean security sign-off follows the release work item. D. Parent establishes hierarchy rather than a before and after dependency. Exam tip. Interpret dependency links relative to the work item you are editing. Prerequisite work is its predecessor. Question number 60. Scenario. An Azure pipeline runs an automated test suite whose failures are intermittent and have been confirmed to be unrelated to source code changes or the execution environment. The team wants to reduce repeated investigation of those failures. For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. Statement 1. Adding only the test results trend dashboard widget identifies the tests as flaky and automatically reduces repeated troubleshooting effort. Statement 1. 1. Adding only the test results trend dashboard widget identifies the tests as flaky and automatically reduces repeated troubleshooting effort. The answer is no. The widget visualizes test result trends, but it does not by itself classify or manage flaky tests. Flaky test detection and management must be enabled and used in the test workflow. Exam tip. Distinguish test analytics widgets from flaky test management features. A chart can reveal patterns, but does not remediate them. Question number 61. Scenario. A banking platform team stores reusable Bicep modules in GitHub. An Azure Pipelines release deploys the modules through development, test, and production stages. Production deployment must be blocked when the proposed resources would violate assigned Azure policy definitions. Which pipeline control should the team implement? The available options are as follows. Option A. Add an ARM what if step immediately before the production deployment. Option B. Run Bicep linting in a pull request validation build. Option C. Add a pre-deployment gate that performs an Azure policy compliance assessment. Option D. Invoke an Azure automation runbook after the production deployment completes. The correct answer is option C. Add a pre-deployment gate that performs an Azure policy compliance assessment. Here's why. A policy compliance gate evaluates the proposed deployment against Azure policy before the production stage proceeds and can block a non-compliant release. Why are the other options not correct? A. What if previews resource changes, but does not by itself enforce Azure policy compliance as a release gate? B. Bicep linting and pull request validation can detect authoring issues, but do not guarantee that a production deployment satisfies assigned policies. D. A post-deployment runbook acts after potentially non-compliant resources have already been released. Exam tip. Use what if to preview changes. Use a policy check or gate when policy compliance must control stage progression. Question number 62. Scenario. An operations team is deploying the Azure Monitor Agent, AMA, to a fleet of Windows virtual machines to collect event logs and performance metrics. The telemetry must be sent to an existing log analytics workspace. Which two resources are required to define the telemetry to collect and to bind that configuration to the virtual machines? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Select exactly two answers. The available options are as follows. Option A, a data collection rule association, DCRA. Option B, a log analytics workspace, shared key. Option C, a data collection rule, DCR. Option D, a virtual machine diagnostic setting. Option E, an Azure automation account. The correct answers are Option A, a data collection rule association, DCRA, and Option C, a data collection rule, DCR. Here's why. The modern Azure Monitor Agent uses a data collection rule, DCR, to define what guest-level data to collect and where to route it, such as a log analytics workspace. A data collection rule association, DCRA, is then created to link the specific virtual machines to that DCR. Why are the other options not correct? B. Workspace shared keys were used to authenticate the retired legacy log analytics agent, MMA. The modern Azure Monitor Agent uses managed identities and DCRs instead. D. Diagnostic settings are used to route Azure platform logs and metrics, whereas guest operating system telemetry collected by the Azure Monitor Agent is configured via DCRs. E. An Azure automation account is used for state configuration or runbooks and is not required to configure data collection for the Azure Monitor Agent. Exam tip. Remember that the modern Azure Monitor Agent, AMA, replaces the legacy workspace IDs and shared keys with data collection rules, DCRs, and data collection rule associations, DCRAs, for centralized, scalable telemetry configuration. Question number 63. Scenario. An e-commerce application sends page view telemetry to application insights. The product team wants to determine how many times each page was opened during a selected period. Which application insights usage pane should the team open? The available options are as follows. Option A, sessions. Option B, events. Option C, users. Option D, impact. The correct answer is Option B, events. Here's why. The events pane summarizes telemetry events, including page views, and shows how often individual pages or custom events occurred. Why are the other options not correct? A. Sessions groups user activity into visits rather than reporting page access frequency directly. C. Users focuses on counts and characteristics of distinct users. D. Impact correlates performance characteristics with user behavior and business outcomes rather than listing page view frequency. Exam tip. Use events for occurrence counts, users for distinct users, and sessions for visit-level behavior. Question number 64. Scenario. A platform project uses Azure Monitor and a log analytics workspace. Analysts must run log queries and create private dashboards for personal analysis. Operator B must only inspect auto-scale configurations, alert rules, and alert activity. Neither user should be allowed to modify monitoring settings. Select the least privileged role for each user. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. Assign Analyst A the blank role. The choices for Statement 1 are Monitoring Contributor, Log Analytics Reader, Monitoring Metrics Publisher, or Monitoring Reader. Statement 2. Assign Operator B the blank role. The choices for Statement 2 are Log Analytics Reader, Monitoring Metrics Publisher, Monitoring Reader, or Monitoring Contributor. For statement 1, the correct selection is Log Analytics Reader. Analyst A needs read access to log analytics data, but no permission to change monitoring resources. For statement 2, the correct selection is Monitoring Reader. Operator B can inspect autoscale and alert configuration and activity without modifying them. Exam tip: choose Log Analytics Reader for workspace query access and Monitoring Reader for broad, read-only monitoring visibility. Question number 65. Scenario: an Azure DevOps project must send build completion events to two internal receivers. Receiver A exposes only an HTTP endpoint, while receiver B exposes an HTTPS endpoint. Which receiver can be configured as the target of an Azure DevOps webhook? The available options are as follows. Option A, receiver A and receiver B. Option B, receiver B only. Option C, receiver A only. The correct answer is option B, receiver B only. Here's why. Azure DevOps webhooks require a secure HTTPS service endpoint, so only receiver B can be configured. Why are the other options not correct? A. Receiver A cannot be used because its endpoint is HTTP rather than HTTPS. C. Receiver A does not meet the secure endpoint requirement. Exam tip: for Azure DevOps webhooks, validate the receiver's HTTPS endpoint before troubleshooting event filters or payloads. Question number 66. Scenario: a team uses the Agile process in Azure boards. 3 imported work items must be assigned states that place them correctly on the product backlog and Kanban board. Drag the appropriate state to each work item condition. Each state may be used once, more than once, or not at all. The available source items are as follows. Source item 1, removed. Source item 2, resolved. Source item 3, proposed. Source item 4, completed. Source item 5, in progress. The destination requirements are as follows. Destination A, implementation is finished, verification is pending, and the item must remain on the backlog. Destination B, work has not started, and the item must remain on the backlog. Destination C, work is fully finished, the item must appear in the board's completed column, and it must not remain on the backlog. The first correct mapping is resolved, map to implementation is finished, verification is pending, and the item must remain on the backlog. The second correct mapping is proposed, map to work has not started, and the item must remain on the backlog. The third correct mapping is completed, map to work is fully finished, the item must appear in the board's completed column, and it must not remain on the backlog. Here's why. In the Agile process, proposed represents backlog work that has not started, resolved represents implemented work awaiting verification, and completed represents verified finished work in the completed state category. Exam tip: separate resolved from completed. Resolved work awaits verification, while completed work is finished and closed. Question number 67. Scenario: a delivery pipeline builds Linux container images and publishes them to Azure Container Registry before deployment to AKS. The security team requires vulnerability assessment of each image before the deployment stage proceeds. Which Microsoft Defender plan should be included in the solution? The available options are as follows. Option A, Microsoft Defender for storage. Option B, Microsoft Defender for containers. Option C, Microsoft Defender for app service. Option D, Microsoft Defender for DevOps. The correct answer is option B, Microsoft Defender for containers. Here's why. Microsoft Defender for Containers provides vulnerability assessment for container images and supports securing the container supply chain before AKS deployment. Why are the other options not correct? A. Defender for storage protects storage accounts and their data, not container images. C. Defender for app service protects app service workloads rather than images destined for AKS. D. Defender for DevOps surfaces security posture and findings across connected DevOps environments, but is not the container image vulnerability assessment plan itself. Exam tip: match the scanner to the artifact. Defender for containers is the direct fit for container image vulnerabilities. Question number 68. Scenario: A regression suite in Azure pipelines sometimes passes and sometimes fails even though the source revision, test data, and execution environment are unchanged. The team wants to reduce the effort spent investigating these non-deterministic failures. Proposed solution: enable test impact analysis so that only tests affected by recent code changes are selected. Does the proposed solution meet the goal? The available options are as follows. Option A: yes. Option B: no. The correct answer is option B, no. Here's why. Test impact analysis reduces the number of tests selected after code changes. It does not identify or manage non-deterministic tests whose outcomes vary without relevant changes. Why are the other options not correct? A. Enabling test impact analysis can shorten test execution, but does not address the root problem of flaky results. Exam tip: use flaky test detection, quarantine, rerun, and ownership workflows for non-deterministic tests. TI optimizes test selection. Question number 69. Scenario: a development team hosts an application in a GitHub repository. The application consumes open-source packages, and the team wants automatic alerts when a referenced package version has a known security vulnerability. Which GitHub capability should the team enable? The available options are as follows. Option A: Dependabot alerts. Option B: CodeQL code scanning. Option C: secret scanning. Option D: push protection. The correct answer is option A, Dependabot alerts. Here's why. Dependabot compares dependencies in the repository's dependency graph with known vulnerable versions and raises alerts for affected packages. Why are the other options not correct? B. CodeQL analyzes first-party source code for security weaknesses rather than primarily monitoring package versions. C. Secret scanning detects exposed credentials and other secret patterns. D. Push protection blocks supported secrets before they are pushed. It does not assess vulnerable package versions. Exam tip: use Dependabot for dependency vulnerabilities, CodeQL for source code analysis, and secret scanning for credential exposure. Question number 70. Scenario: a GitHub Actions workflow has packages, write permission, and must build an image, authenticate to GitHub Container Registry by using the workflow token, and publish the image. Select the command that should be used for each workflow step. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. To create the image with the required registry tag, run the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are docker pull ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository, latest, docker build. File docker file. Tag ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository, latest, or docker login ghcr.io, $github.actor. Statement 2. To authenticate to ghcr.io without storing a long-lived password, run the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are ACR login, name ghcr.io, docker login ghcr.io, username, echo $secrets github_, or docker login ghcr.io, $github.actor, password stin. Statement 3. To publish the tagged image, run the blank. The choices for Statement 3 are docker build. File docker file. Tag ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository. Latest, docker pull ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository. Latest, or docker push ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository. Latest. For Statement 1, the correct selection is docker build. File docker file. Tag ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository, latest. Docker build creates the local image and applies the registry qualified tag. For Statement 2, the correct selection is echo $secrets to github_, docker login ghcr.io, $github.actor. Password stin github_token is short-lived and password stin avoids embedding it in the command argument. For Statement 3, the correct selection is docker push ghcr.io/$ left brace github.repository, latest. Docker push uploads the already tagged image to GitHub Container Registry. Exam tip: for GHCR, grant packages, write, authenticate with GitHub_token, and push an image carrying a ghcr.io qualified tag. Question number 71. Scenario. A multi-stage Azure pipeline must run an OWASP ZAP baseline scan against a deployed test endpoint by using the approved ZAP container image. The pipeline must then make the scan report available for review. Arrange the actions in the order in which the pipeline should perform them. The available items are as follows. Item 1. Publish the generated ZAP report. Item 2. Run the ZAP baseline scan against the test endpoint. Item 3. Pull the approved OWASP ZAP container image. Item 4. Start a container from the pulled image. The correct sequence is as follows. First, pull the approved OWASP ZAP container image. Second, start a container from the pulled image. Third, run the ZAP baseline scan against the test endpoint. Fourth, publish the generated ZAP report. Here's why. The image must exist locally before a container can start. The running ZAP environment then performs the baseline assessment, after which the generated report can be published as pipeline output. Exam tip. Provision the scanning tool before execution and publish results only after the scan has generated them. Question number 72. Scenario. An automated UI test fails intermittently in an Azure pipeline although no relevant code, data, or infrastructure change occurred. The engineering team wants to minimize repeated investigation of the same flaky behavior. Proposed solution. Increase the percentage of application code covered by the test suite. Does the proposed solution meet the goal? The available options are as follows. Option A. Yes. Option B. No. The correct answer is option B. No. Here's why. Increasing code coverage changes how much code is exercised, but does not make a non-deterministic test reliable or reduce repeated investigation of its intermittent failures. Why are the other options not correct? A. More coverage can improve test breadth, but it does not diagnose or manage flaky execution behavior. Exam tip. Coverage measures exercised code. Flakiness measures test reliability. Treat them as separate quality concerns. Question number 73. Scenario. A new Azure DevOps project contains a service connection. 3 Microsoft intra-groups require different levels of access, and every assignment must follow least privilege. Drag the appropriate service connection security role to each requirement. Each role may be used once, more than once, or not at all. The available source items are as follows. Source item 1. Contributor. Source item 2. User. Source item 3. Organization level administrator. Source item 4. Creator. Source item 5. Project level administrator. The destination requirements are as follows. Destination A. Team Alpha can share or unshare the service connection with other projects. Destination B. Team Beta can rename the service connection and edit its description. Destination C. Team Gamma can use the service connection in build and release pipelines. The first correct mapping is Organization Level Administrator. Mapped to Team Alpha can share or unshare the service connection with other projects. The second correct mapping is Project Level Administrator. Mapped to Team Beta can rename the service connection and edit its description. The third correct mapping is User. Mapped to Team Gamma can use the service connection in build and release pipelines. Here's why. Organization level administrators control sharing across projects. Project level administrators manage a service connection within the project, and users can consume an authorized connection in pipelines. Exam tip. Service connection roles separate organization-wide sharing, project-level administration, creation, and pipeline consumption. Question number 74. Scenario. A repository has a supported dependency graph and Dependabot alerts enabled. The security lead wants to know which events cause GitHub to reevaluate dependencies for vulnerable versions automatically. Which 2 events trigger this evaluation? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Select exactly 2 answers. The available options are as follows. Option A. A pull request is opened. Option B. The repository dependency graph changes. Option C. A user forks the repository. Option D. A new security advisory is added to the GitHub advisory database. Option E. An issue is assigned to a maintainer. The correct answers are option B, the repository dependency graph changes, and option D, a new security advisory is added to the GitHub advisory database. Here's why. Dependabot reevaluates repository dependencies when the dependency graph changes and when new advisory information may newly classify an existing dependency as vulnerable. Why are the other options not correct? A. Opening a pull request alone is not a vulnerability alert trigger unless it changes dependency information. C. Forking a repository does not itself cause the original repository's dependencies to be rescanned. E. Assigning an issue does not change dependencies or advisory data. Exam tip. Dependabot alerts react to dependency information and vulnerability intelligence, not ordinary collaboration events. Question number 75. Scenario. A developer already has permission to run an Azure pipeline. The pipeline will test an application in an Azure Deployment Environments project, and the developer must be able to create and manage only their own deployment environments. Which role should be assigned to the developer to satisfy the requirement with least privilege? The available options are as follows. Option A, Deployment Environments User. Option B, Dev Center Project Admin. Option C, Build Administrators. Option D, Contributors. The correct answer is option A, Deployment Environments User. Here's why. Deployment Environments User grants project members the ability to create and manage environments without giving them administrative control over the Dev Center project. Why are the other options not correct? B. Dev Center Project Admin grants broader project management permissions than the developer requires. C. Build Administrators governs Azure Pipeline's build administration, not environment provisioning in Azure deployment environments. D. Contributors is an Azure DevOps project role and does not provide the required Azure Deployment Environments data plane permission. Exam tip. Pipeline permission and Azure Resource RBAC are separate. Grant Deployment Environments User for governed self-service provisioning. Question number 76. Scenario. An Azure pipeline installs Yarn dependencies. The team wants cache at 2 to reuse the Yarn cache when the operating system and yarn.lock file have not changed. Select the cache at 2 input name for each value. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. Set inputs that the blank to the cache key composed of yarn, $agent.os, and yarn.lock. The choices for Statement 1 are restore keys, item, key, or element. Statement 2. Set inputs that the blank to $yarn_cache_ folder. The choices for Statement 2 are directory, path, folder, or location. For Statement 1, the correct selection is key. The key combines a fixed segment, agent operating system, and lock file hash to identify compatible cache entries. For Statement 2, the correct selection is path. The path input specifies the Yarn cache directory to restore and save. Exam tip. In cache at 2, key defines cache identity, path defines cached content, and restore key supplies fallback prefixes. Question number 77. Scenario. A delivery team uses an Azure Boards dashboard to evaluate work item flow. The team wants to measure the elapsed time from when active work begins until the item is completed. Which widget should be added to the dashboard? The available options are as follows. Option A, lead time. Option B, velocity. Option C, cycle time. Option D, sprint burn down. The correct answer is option C, cycle time. Here's why. Cycle time measures the elapsed duration from the start of active work until the work item is completed. Why are the other options not correct? A. Lead time starts when the work item is created and includes waiting time before work begins. B. Velocity measures the amount of work completed during an iteration. D. Sprint burn down shows remaining work over the course of a sprint. Exam tip. Lead time begins at request creation. Cycle time begins when active work starts. Question number 78. Scenario. An Azure pipeline builds a mobile application. After every successful build, Azure DevOps must invoke an incoming webhook for a team chat channel. What should be created in Azure DevOps? The available options are as follows. Option A, an Azure Monitor Action Group. Option B, A service hook subscription. Option C, an Azure Monitor alert rule. Option D, a repository branch policy. The correct answer is option B, a service hook subscription. Here's why. An Azure DevOps Service Hook subscription can listen for a successful build event and post the event payload to the chat channel's incoming webhook. Why are the other options not correct? A. An Azure Monitor Action Group routes Azure Monitor alerts and is not the Azure DevOps Build Event integration. C. An Azure Monitor Alert rule evaluates monitor telemetry rather than subscribing directly to Azure Pipeline Build events. D. A branch policy controls repository changes and pull request validation, not chat notifications. Exam tip. Use service hooks to send Azure DevOps events to external systems such as webhooks and collaboration tools. Question number 79. Scenario. An Azure Boards work item has ID 482, and the project's source code is hosted in GitHub. A developer is creating a new pull request and must associate it with the work item. Which two actions create the association? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Select exactly two answers. The available options are as follows. Option A. Add the pull request URL as ordinary text in a comment on work item 482. Option B. Add hashtag AB482 to the pull request description. Option C. From the work items development section, add a GitHub pull request link and provide the pull request URL. Option D. Add AB number 482 to the pull request title or description. The correct answers are option C. From the work items development section, add a GitHub pull request link and provide the pull request URL, and option D. Add AB number 482 to the pull request title or description. Here's why. Azure Boards supports an explicit GitHub pull request development link, and the AB hashtag ID mentioned syntax in a GitHub pull request creates a link to the referenced Azure Boards work item. Why are the other options not correct? A. A plain URL in a work item comment remains comment text and does not create the structured development association. B. Hashtag AB482 reverses the required AB hashtag prefix syntax and is not recognized as an Azure Boards work item mention. Exam tip. Use AB hashtag work item ID in GitHub text or create a structured GitHub development link from the Azure Boards work item. Question number 80. Scenario. A team must version a 3 GB zip archive together with the Git commits that reference it. The remote repository supports both Git LFS and Git FAT. Which two approaches can satisfy the requirement? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Select exactly two answers. The available options are as follows. Option A. Configure Git LFS to track zip files before adding and committing the archive. Option B. Compress the archive again with gzip and commit it as a normal Git blob. Option C. Store the archive in Azure Blob Storage with blob versioning and omit it from Git. Option D. Configure Git FAT to manage zip files before adding and committing the archive. Option E. Put the archive in the Git stash and push the stash reference. The correct answers are option A. Configure Git LFS to track zip files before adding and committing the archive, and option D. Configure Git FAT to manage zip files before adding and committing the archive. Here's why. Both Git LFS and Git FAT store a lightweight reference in Git while keeping the large binary content in external storage, preserving version association with commits. Why are the other options not correct? B. Recompressing a zip usually provides little benefit and still stores a multi-gigabyte binary directly in Git history. C. Blob versioning preserves versions in Azure storage but does not automatically associate the file version with the corresponding Git commit. E. Git stash is temporary local state and is not a versioned large file storage mechanism. Exam tip. Use Git LFS or Git FAT for versioned large binaries. Do not commit multi-gigabyte blobs directly to normal Git history. Question number 81. Scenario. A platform team wants dashboard KPIs that expose 3 weaknesses in its delivery and production support process. Drag the most appropriate KPI to each observed problem. Each KPI may be used once, more than once, or not at all. The available source items are as follows. Source item 1. Deployment failure rate. Source item 2. Mean time to recovery. Source item 3. Bug report rate. Source item 4. Application failure rate. Source item 5. Defect escape rate. The destination requirements are as follows. Destination A. Production application errors occur frequently after releases. Destination B. An increasing share of defects is first discovered by customers. Destination C. Restoring service after a production failure takes too long. The first correct mapping is application failure rate. Map to production application errors occur frequently after releases. The second correct mapping is defect escape rate. Map to an increasing share of defects is first discovered by customers. The third correct mapping is mean time to recovery. Map to restoring service after a production failure takes too long. Here's why. Application failure rate measures runtime failures. Defect escape rate measures defects that evade internal controls and reach users. And mean time to recovery measures how quickly service is restored after failure. Exam tip. Failure rate measures frequency. Defect escape rate measures leakage to customers. And MTTR measures recovery speed. Question number 82. Scenario. A private Azure DevOps project uses a free Microsoft-hosted Windows agent. A build normally requires about 2 hours, but the job is terminated when it reaches the free hosted job time limit. The team wants the build to finish without maintaining agent infrastructure. What should the team do? The available options are as follows. Option A. Deploy and maintain a self-hosted agent. Option B. Change the pipeline to a Microsoft-hosted Linux image. Option C. Purchase a Microsoft-hosted parallel job. Option D. Modify the software installed on the Microsoft-hosted image. The correct answer is option C. Purchase a Microsoft-hosted parallel job. Here's why. A paid Microsoft-hosted parallel job increases the maximum duration available to a hosted job while retaining Microsoft's managed agent infrastructure. Why are the other options not correct? A. A self-hosted agent can avoid the hosted limit but introduces agent deployment, patching, security, and maintenance effort. B. Switching operating systems does not remove the Microsoft-hosted job duration limit. D. Microsoft-hosted images are ephemeral and cannot be persistently reconfigured to extend the job limit. Exam tip. Parallel job licensing controls hosted capacity and job limits. Self-hosted agents trade platform limits for administrative responsibility. Question number 83. Scenario. In Azure boards, Work Item Beta cannot begin until Work Item Alpha is completed. You are editing Work Item Beta and need to represent this dependency. Which link type should you add from Beta to the existing Work Item Alpha? The available options are as follows. Option A. Related. Option B. Parent. Option C. Predecessor. Option D. Successor. The correct answer is option C, predecessor. Here's why. From the dependent work item beta, alpha is the predecessor because alpha must be completed before work on beta can begin. Why are the other options not correct? A. Related records a non-directional association and does not express execution dependency. B. Parent represents hierarchy rather than sequencing. D. Successor would indicate that alpha follows beta, which reverses the required dependency direction. Exam tip. From the current item, link the work that must happen first as its predecessor and later work as its successor. Question number 84. Scenario. A developer is committing a correction to Azure repos. The associated Azure Boards bug has ID 742, and the commit message must transition the bug to the resolved state when the commit reaches the default branch. Which text should be included in the commit message? The available options are as follows. Option A. Verifies number 742. Option B. Fixes number 742. Option C. Number 742 completes. Option D. Resolves hashtag AB742. The correct answer is option B. Fixes number 742. Here's why. The supported resolution mentioned fixes number 742 links the commit to work item 742 and completes or resolves the work item when the commit is applied to the default branch. Why are the other options not correct? A. Verifies is not a supported work item resolution keyword. C. The keyword and ID are in an unsupported order, and completes is not used in this form. D. AB hashtag syntax is used for GitHub integration references, and this expression is not the Azure repos resolution syntax. Exam tip. In Azure repos commit messages, use a supported resolution keyword such as fixes followed by hashtag work item ID. You have completed part 2 of the AZ-400 practice series. Continue your preparation by opening the complete playlist and watching the remaining parts in sequence. Please like this video, subscribe to Tech with Kaushik, and enable notifications for more certification exam preparation content. Share your score, questions, or feedback in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next part.